Yes, it is. It is in progress. So we are on, and today is August 12th, and this is another community call and Ask Me Anything session of BrightID. Last week we talked about the Ethereum attestation service, and there were lots of conversations coming up about privacy and what actually is being shared and what kind of privacy uh, people are interested in. And then lots of people asked about BrightID and how the privacy thing works on BrightID app, on BrightID network. And this week we're going to focus on the privacy on BrightID itself, and we're going to explore the privacy that we have on BrightID itself. I'm going to open this conversation with the at least kind of the knowledge that I have so far with BrightID. Then I'm gonna hand it over to other folks to ask questions or move forward this conversation with other detailed aspects of BrightID. So if you already have BrightID app and you have the experience using it, you know that on BrightID app you are using a name and a picture, but we always say that BrightID gives you total privacy. The the fact that we always share with our users is that they can use any picture and they can use any name. So we're not requiring our users to use a real picture of themselves or a real name that they use. And they are enabled to change that picture, change that name at any point in time. They're not being uploaded anywhere on the internet. They're just shared peer to peer with people that you make a connection to and you confirm your connection with them, even the fake name and the fake picture that you're using. And your verification on BrightID has nothing to do with your name or your picture. The picture and the name that you're using on the app are only there just for the sake of the connections that we make with each other. So for a connection party, for an instance like this, when people are just here on videos, we're not meeting in person, when I receive a bunch of connections, I would confirm the connection that I'm getting with people that are here. I'm going to say, okay, who is using the picture of a flower and like named ABC? And then if Benoit or Ashraf confirms that, oh, this is me, I'm using that picture of a flower, I know that I'm making a connection to this person. It's not coming out of nowhere. I know who I'm making a connection to. That's the only use that we have for that name and for that picture on BrightID. It's not being saved. It's not being analyzed anywhere by BrightID. And if you take a look at the Explorer page that we have, which is at explorer.brightid.org, you can see that before you sign in with your BrightID hash and with your password, there are all these dots and the lines between them, and you can see that they are connected with each other. You can see the crowded parts of the graph, the less crowded parts of the graph, but you don't see any info about these dots. You don't know who this dot belongs to. You don't know who that person is, or the picture that they're using, or the name that they're using. Nothing is attached to that dot. But then when you sign in, you see yourself, the picture and the name that you are using, and also the name and the picture of the people that you have a connection to. So those are going to be the only people that you see some information about. You don't see other parts of the graph. You don't see other users. You don't know who they are. So on BrightID, so far as a noob user like myself, I have thousands of connections, but still, I'm not like a technical guy. But so far, I know that I'm not sharing my picture all over. I know that people, if they don't have a connection with me, they don't know my picture and name on BrightID. But I still feel like if someone has the power and the time and really connects the dots, they can like figure me out. especially myself and people who have thousands of connections, large numbers of connections, because they can figure it out. They can say, okay, there are like a limited number of people with this many connections on BrightID, and like this guy is connected to one of my connections. So if they really want to, they can figure me out on the graph, and then there is this potential to connect the dots and find the particular users on BrightID. But at least for a regular guy, my privacy is being maintained, especially if I don't use my real name or my real picture. But I think that that's the level of knowledge that I have about my privacy on BrightID. Uh, moreover, I know that applications, when they are using BrightID, they only get the attestation from the BrightID context that this is a verified BrightID user that is trying to sign in or register in this application, and this user hasn't registered in your application before. That's the only knowledge that they get from BrightID context. So even the applications don't get the information about myself. So I'm kind of feeling private and not sharing my personal info with these applications at the same time. And that's the whole purpose of BrightID, which is giving you a unique identifier without having to share your personal information. Now, in the traditional sense, to provide you with that unique identifier to make sure that this is the person, this is the account that belongs to this person, you had to give out all these personal information, names, pictures, proofs of address, ID cards, and then the sum of all this information would only refer to one person. You wouldn't find two people with the same name and last name and proof of address and all these things at the same time. So that would give you a unique identifier. BrightID, on the other hand, is just doing the same thing, but without requiring all that info from the user. It's just the connections that you have, the communities that you belong to, so to speak. But yeah, that's the extent that I know about the BrightID privacy. But I know that when we are connecting to applications, there are some info with connected to your BrightID. Like when you have your BrightID and then you register with an Ethereum account or Ethereum wallet, then that Ethereum wallet is connected to your BrightID in that application context. So there might be a way of figuring out your Ethereum wallet through your registration with BrightID, but I don't know how actually that would work in practice. So do you want to explore that, or do you want to explain more about that? Maybe Philip or Adam would let us know more about that.
Yeah, I can. Thanks. By the way, Paslar, I think you did a better job than I could have of explaining privacy and BrightID. So I think there's a reason why you have the job you have. But that
Thank you.
very excellent. As far as applications, so applications are going to um, a different set of unique identifiers. So your BrightID, like you said, is a unique identifier, but that does not get passed around. And the reason is because if we were to just take a unit like a unique identifier for you and pass it around to all the apps, then app A would be able to, or like people in app A or maybe the admins of app A would be able to see like, oh, okay, this is the same user that's this other person in app B. That's the same person. And we don't want people to be forced to link themselves in different applications. We don't want that. That's an invasion of privacy. So we avoid that completely. In the in the upcoming release of BrightID, we use blind signatures to be able to attest to someone's unique usage of an app without even sharing anything, like any sort of identifier with that with BrightID nodes. but right now we share, we do, we keep like a separate mapping on BrightID nodes. And so what that means, so that extra mapping is an extra layer of protection, which means that if, let's say, there was a data leak on app A, and then that data got out, and then someone was also running a BrightID node, and there was also a data leak on app B, and that data got out, and someone's running a BrightID node, they can take the mapping of identifiers under app A and the mapping of identifiers under app B, put them together and say, oh, okay, use this user equals this user on app A and app B. So there's still a way to, under, if there's enough data being leaked out, there's still a way to like connect users in different apps. With blind signatures, that just doesn't exist at all. So we're moving to blind signatures to make privacy even better. It's already good. We're already going way above what almost every app you use on the internet does, but we want to do even better and just basically make it unlinkable when you're using different applications, as it should be. The apps don't need to know who you are, especially who you are in another app. They just need to know that you're unique in that app. So that's the service we're providing for apps and users. And we have the goal of privacy first. That's okay. So we're recording again.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to say that we've always had the goal of privacy first, and everything that we've done with BrightID, it's really, really, really important. That's one of the main benefits of decentralization, is that you get privacy if you do it right. So we try to do it right from the very start. And yeah, I mean, one of the other benefits of decentralization is it's kind of weird, because it's like, it almost feels like it's the opposite of privacy, but transparency. But when we're talking about transparency, we're talking about transparency of like the process of being verified unique. Because let's say that you hand over that process to the US Department of Identity or something. Well, how do you know that like Alice in the US Department of Identity isn't creating like millions of fake accounts for her, evil friends or whatever? I don't know. So yeah, transparency, but also privacy. Those are our goals. And oh yeah, one thing that I wanted to say to your question is that if an app says that you should register, like an app that uses BrightID says that you should register with, let's say, like you said, an Ethereum address or an email address, because I think like you want a unique identifier if you want to preserve your privacy. And I think people know this and instinctively knows this for different applications. When you're registering for an application, if you really want to be private, use something that you don't use anywhere else. So if an app says, hey, please register with your Ethereum address, don't pick an Ethereum address that you've used for 10 other different apps. If you really want to be private, just make a brand new Ethereum address that's never been used before and use it for that app. Same with an email address. Like if you really want to be private, just make a brand new email address that's never been used before and use it just for that app. So yeah, that recommendation is still in place, even if you're using BrightID. So yeah, just something to look out for.
I think one of the things that you could do to add a layer of privacy to BrightID is using a different Ethereum wallet for each application that you're registering with, if they are using like Ethereum wallets.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
way
that's
they can't
exactly
like,
right. Yep.
like you might consider using a separate one for each of the applications that you're using with your BrightID. This way, yeah, they can't figure you out by like connecting all these applications to each other to find out which BrightID user that is.
Yeah, because a lot of these applications that use Ethereum addresses, they're storing just on chain your actions in that application. So, it's nice because it's transparent and decentralized, but at the same time, like everything you're doing in that application potentially is just out there on the blockchain. So if you want to keep some privacy through pseudonymity on this application, then don't like reuse an Ethereum address, because then people could potentially look on the blockchain and link you between app A and app B and say, oh look, we can see this person who's posting these messages that are being recorded on the blockchain is also this person over here that's doing this other stuff. And so you get like people can connect it up. So yeah, be especially careful when you're using blockchain stuff. But I mean, honestly, like um, applications are so bad at leaking data that you should never trust an application to just uh, like keep your data safe. You just assume that it's not safe. Assume that if you're using an application, that they're just leaking your data out everywhere. So just because it happens. So yeah, anything you can do to just minimize the amount of data you give them, and also just um, like don't reuse things if you don't have to between different applications. That'll help to protect your privacy.
Mhm. Is there any way, I kind of already know the answer to this, but I want to bring it up. Is there any way for for a hacker to hack into BrightID context and figure out all the pictures and the names uh, for 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 any reason? Is that even possible?
No, they can. So someone could get onto your device and look at all your names and photos that you personally have, but no one could get all like the entire because they're all separately encrypted. In so no, you there's no like master secret or something that has all the names and photos, and there's no like um yeah, so no, um there's just no way. But like you mentioned before, so this is why you should not think that BrightID is anonymous, because like you said before, people can connect the dots. And like imagine if you have a government or a corporation with a lot of funding, and they're intent on figuring out who this point in BrightID is. They can take data that has been leaked, because it's pretty easy for me, like you said, Paslar, I can, because I'm connected to you, I can say, oh, this is Paslar, and I can tell everyone that it's Paslar. Like I can say this dot in BrightID is Paslar, and I can just basically out you to the whole world. And once that's happened, it's like it's hard to undo that, even if you try to, it's kind of like it's that information is out there. So don't think that BrightID is anonymous. So there's a difference between being anonymous and being like preserving privacy. So we're not going to, like, BrightID itself is not going to do anything to store your data, leak your data, use your data, anything like that. But other BrightID users could. So it'll just assume it'll happen, but you can also be careful with who you connect to. If you're lucky and you just connect to people that aren't going to be careless and reveal who you are, then yeah, maybe you can stay anonymous. But that's, I would just assume that you're not going to be anonymous if you're not on BrightID. At some point, someone somewhere is probably going to either figure it out or like reveal you to someone else or something like that.
I see. There's someone asking, is it re is it the case, I think, that a reported person cannot set the connection level to recovery? I want to say that, so in order to select someone as your recovery connection, both parties, yourself and your friend, should select each other as an already known connection. You can the purpose for this is to have people select their family and friends, people they really know, as their recovery connection. So if you select them as a already known connection and they select you as an already known connection, only then you can edit their connection level to a recovery connection and have them as a the recovery connection to help you out recover your account later. I don't think it matters that they have been reported or you have been reported at all. Cool. Uh, I want to ask Adam in particular because I know he knows all these other projects that are working on identity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do you consider BrightID as a like the most private identity provider or uniqueness provider among all the others, or can you like think of other projects that are having the same amount of privacy as BrightID?
No, I don't consider it the most. So one thing that I will just that I want to clarify is that let's say that even if your like particular dot in BrightID is revealed, like your name and photo or whatever, like people are like, hey, this dot right here is Puzzler, and let's let everyone know. Apps never, I just want to make it perfectly clear that apps never see, like they never know which dot you are. So apps can't use that as like a single point of reference to figure out who you are or to share, share notes with other apps about you or something like that. They never get to see that. So they don't know. So like an app is never, I think we may have mentioned it, but I just want to make it absolutely clear. Like an app never gets your name and photo. They don't get to see which point you are in the graph. They just get to know that you're a unique user in that app. So I think that's really important. That's the most important aspect of privacy to us. Because users will be users and users can do like weird things, and then governments will analyze graphs. And so there's only a certain amount of expectation that you can have about privacy. But I would say, as far as like, there are ideas out there for like trying to solve the same sort of thing that we're doing, but even more private and completely anonymous. But for that to work, you can't use any sort of social connecting, which to me just destroys the whole system. Like you have to, like somebody somewhere has to make a connection. So there have been some ideas about how could you make a social graph where you're making connections, but when the graph gets analyzed, it like right at the time that it happens, it just like in a decentralized way goes out and gets that connection information one at a time from like each of the users in a path that it needs or something like that. So there's something Barry Whitehat made when like after I met him about a year ago and we were talking about BrightID, he made this post on ETH Research about blind find, which I think is very interesting. Like, how could you search a social graph without revealing the social graph? And so if we are successful in creating something like that, then you could basically have an anonymous social graph, which would be really interesting. So that's, as far as I know, no one's ever done that before, but it's a really interesting possibility. So it may be possible in the future to even have greater privacy. As far as what people are doing now, like there's things you can do. So IDENA says, they say, okay, well, we're the most private because we're completely anonymous, because all we care about is we have this nameless, faceless activity that you participate in. You don't need to know anything about the people you're participating in. All you need to know is that people are doing it at the same time. And because like only one person can be in one place at one time, then we get some uniqueness there. And so they base theirs on that. And so yeah, I mean you can look into IDENA and see what they're doing, and but that's an example of like the most private you can get, because it doesn't even look or care about anything about connections or between people or any information about people at all. It doesn't rely on that at all, other than you're able to solve these human created puzzles that supposedly only humans can solve, and then you do them at the same time as other humans, and that proves that you're only in one place at one time. So that's like a, you know, so that's a different way to do it, very interesting. So look into that and see what you think about it. um as far as like other identity related projects that are allowing people to preserve their privacy, I would say that most other identity projects are about proving something about yourself in the right place at the right time in the right way. And there's definitely good and bad ways to do that. And I think there's new technologies coming out, new approaches coming out that can do a much better job than what we've been doing in the internet so far. So if you want to be able to share just enough information with, I guess, the agency that or person that needs it in a way that they can't go and like share that with other people without your permission, um, yeah, that can be done. Um, we have the cryptographic technology to do that, and um, like some services are already starting to do that. So I'm looking forward to the day where we all have identity wallets, just like we all have crypto wallets. We all have identity wallets, and we can manage the things that we want to share about ourselves in a privacy preserving way. So I think, you know, BrightID definitely wants to be part of that whole movement of you know, better privacy with sharing things about ourselves.
Hmm. I guess so. The fact is that lots of our users, uh, before at least experiencing using the app, think of BrightID as an ID, like an identification provider. But that's not true. We are providing only uniqueness. But I'm not sure if BrightID itself is planning uh, to flourish into a self-sovereign identity provision application. But I'm really interested in knowing how would that actually work? How would a self-sovereign identity based on BrightID work, where I can like show any aspect of my identity that I wish when it's needed? Like if they need to know that I'm over 18 years old, I could prove that I'm over 18 without showing any other aspect of my identity, or just any other the thing that they might require me to do. How close are we when you see all these other projects around to a self-sovereign identity package that I could use, uh, and it's not like government based. It's like a universal self-sovereign identity.
Um, yeah, so we didn't want to, we wanted to specialize and not get into providing identity wallets and providing signed credentials, other than the one credential that we care about, which is uh, are you unique in this app? This app wants to know, are you a unique user in their app? So here's a credential that says that you are, according to the BrightID network. That's the credential that we want, that we care about. So you know, I guess we're a very limited wallet if you want to look at it that way. But um, like really, I hope that people use whatever wallet that they are most comfortable with too. to manage that, to manage their own credentials. Yeah, we allow people to, so we allow people to save their, when they get a verification from the BrightID network that says that they're verified for a certain app, we save that for them in the mobile app, so that does kind of make us a wallet. But I mean, the BrightID reference app is just a reference app. As soon as like other apps come along that can do everything that BrightID can do, then we don't even need. I think BrightID, the app, will probably turn into more of like a manager, like I guess a management program for like keeping track of where you have your BrightID, like where you're using your BrightID. So imagine, I think you all have experience with things like, let's say, like Google allows you to like sign into a bunch of different accounts of Google, and then you can revoke access to those. So I think BrightID will probably morph into that, where it's just like, okay, I'm going to revoke my BrightID access from these different apps and from these different devices, and that's all it will be. And then the connection making will probably actually happen in the different apps that you're using, because there'll be social networking type apps and things like that that'll have higher standards than something like Facebook. So imagine if you had a much better Facebook that did things in a privacy preserving and decentralized way, and you like had cryptographically signed connections, then BrightID could accept those, because we can't accept Facebook connections because they're just, the quality is just garbage. So, but if we had like a really good version, decentralized Facebook, then we could accept those connections. So you could make connections in that app, and then your BrightID app would just be for like which of your other apps you're authorizing. And so that's kind of what I think it'll be. And so it's not really even a wallet. It's more just like a manager of like which social apps and which devices and stuff like that, that you want to allow to help provide your unique identity for you. So I think the people will still need some way to manage that though. So I think that's what BrightID, if the BrightID app will probably become that. And in that case, you'll still have your other apps that allow you to make connections, and you'll have other apps that allow you to store credentials and be your wallet. And so I don't think BrightID wants to be that. So yeah, it kind of just is. The only reason it is for the app verifications is because there just aren't any like really good wallet providers that can just start working right away for that. So that's why. As soon as there's something that's really convenient, though, I think we'll definitely offload that role onto a wallet. It just makes more sense. Like, why would you store that in the BrightID app when you can store it in your wallet app? It just makes a lot more sense.
I was thinking of uh, this feature that we have on BrightID that we haven't worked on so far because it hasn't been a priority to us with the social handles that you have that you can add to your profile. And then I'm thinking of adding more information there. It kind of makes me concerned about, like, I don't know, being hacked at some point and then there are all these info on my BrightID. But if I'm not worried about that, then I can add all these like personal info that I want with my BrightID, like that, like self-sovereign business card idea that we had before, that like upon making a connection, I can share these information that I want, check them, and then share them. that was kind of like my idea about like having a self-sovereign identity that I can like share with someone whichever info that I want on BrightID. But there's no, I don't know how we're gonna provide an attestation for that. Like right now I can add any of the Instagram or Twitter or any handle that I want to my BrightID. It's not being checked. It's not being like confirmed by any of these social networks. I can add any social network to my BrightID. But yeah, if we can have that, we can then say that, okay, I'm making the decision to share this info and which part of this info with people that I want.
Yeah, so my vision for BrightID is that it doesn't do that. Instead, what it does is, so let's say, so something that I've used that I've imported all my socials into is Keybase. So I have cryptographic proofs for all my socials in there. And so you know that you're dealing with me, and if you're talking to me on Keybase. And so anyways, like what you would do is the BrightID nodes could read the connections that were made in Keybase. So the problem with Keybase is it's not like decentralized enough, but let's imagine a decentralized Keybase. Then you can read the like connection. You could very easily like BrightID nodes could consume the connection data that was made. They could, if connections were being made on Keybase, like between other people, then the BrightID nodes could read that and add that to their graph. And so the BrightID app wouldn't even be used for making connections anymore. And so it wouldn't be used for like proving to other people that you are who you say, like people who you're directly connecting to, that you are who you say you are. So I kind of want to like get rid of that from the BrightID app, even though that the only reason we have it now is because there's just like, I don't know of any great existing product that does it. That's kind of why we do it. But as soon as as soon as like let's say District, which is like a decentralized LinkedIn, let's say that we just tell everyone, hey, make some connections on District, and we'll just read those in. BrightID nodes will just read those in, and that's how you make connections now, or something like that. That could work. And we want people to have lots of options. So not just don't just pick one social network that you use a lot of different social networks and make connections, and then BrightID nodes will just read them in. And then BrightID is just a manager of like, okay, I want like my account, here's like, I want my account on this social network and my account on this social network. I want them all to be like mapped to the same BrightID. So
I see your point. Yeah. I don't see any questions. Roland, before jumping off, has said identity wallet pairs well with the resume wallet transactions. Rabbit Hole has talked about it. Super stoked to see where that goes. Would an identity wallet be able to be broken into smaller wallets of a specific data? Or is it a release it all at one time? I think you covered this already when you were explaining having a wallet with BrightID.
yeah, a really good wallet allows you to compartmentalize your data any way you want, and so you don't, it's not like some big identity. So I gave the Keybase example. Like if you go look at me on Keybase, you'll see that I've imported all these socials. And what it doesn't do is it doesn't allow me to say only share half of those with somebody. But a really good identity wallet would let you just share one with somebody if that's all you wanted to, or whatever, like whatever you feel is appropriate. So that's yeah, we need something more decentralized.
I see.
And I don't think, I mean, we could do that at BrightID, and I don't know. I mean, like I said, we're already kind of doing that, just very, but the only type of credential we're handling is the uniqueness verification for apps. That's the only credential we're storing for users in their, if you want to call it a wallet, in their BrightID wallet. That's the only credential we're storing in there for them. And so it's like, okay, well, we could store other credentials in there, but I think the more we do that, the more people start relying on us for that, and then it becomes even harder to transition to what I hope we will transition into, which is just like just like a manager of like permissions on different devices and different apps, which I think is that's the best thing. That's the best thing we want for BrightID, because I think people should be aware. We've talked before about, well, should BrightID just be completely in the background and kind of like TCP/IP? No one even knows that they're using it. And I think, no, it can't be. You've got to be aware that like certain apps are contributing to your BrightID, and you should be able to like turn them off if you don't want that. And you should also be able to back up your BrightID information on certain devices and then revoke it from certain devices, those sorts of things. So I think a BrightID manager would be good. But it's not an identity wallet, at least not in my mind.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Adam, for being here and uh, explaining all these features or different aspects or your vision with us. You have always been the visionary for BrightID, you and Philip. And I'm really interested in the future and what's going to happen next in BrightID and in the whole identity spectrum, and what's going to happen next. What, like, we are doing this now, but I'm always interested in what you and Philip and others working on identity have in mind for the next phase. What's going to happen next?
So I see that Hao Qian has a hand up. Does he want to?
Yes.
I can ask a question. Is that why his hand is up?
Okay. I'm not sure. Do you have a question maybe in mind? Feel free to unmute yourself and talk to us. It might be by accident. I'm not sure.
Hao Tian.
Are you there? Okay, just let us know if you have something in mind, and we're here for you. If others don't have something in mind to talk about, I want to thank everyone and stop the recording. Is there anyone who has something in mind that wants to share with us? Okay, I guess we're good. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm gonna stop recording and we're gonna do a group connection after this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as the nice lady is gonna tell you,